Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together, we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome to a podcast of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. Today I have Matt Paneitz, and Matt has a nonprofit that he operates in Guatemala, and a great story. Welcome to the show, Matt.
It's really great to be here, Mike. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, so tell me about yourself, where you're from, what motivated you and what motivates you to get to where you are now and where you want to be in the future.
Yeah, I'm from East Texas, right? So, right along the Texas Louisiana border. And what motivates me is maybe a little bit of being from East Texas, combined with some righteous indignation, right? What I saw in Guatemala inspired me to want to do something about what I saw there. And so, what I learned in East Texas, being from that area, combined with that righteous indignation, gave me the idea that I could make an impact. And I think I probably have.
So did you go to school for this? Did you, as a kid, see something that triggered the idea? I mean, you were in the uh, university system somewhere, or were you as a kid working outside on the bayou? Or tell me what would drive you to join the Peace Corps, for instance.
Well, my decision to join the Peace Corps was I was told by a lady friend of mine that she thought it'd be a cool idea if we did it together. And so we joined the Peace Corps together. That really was not my idea. I was a paramedic at the time in uh, Southwest Virginia. Had a really cool job that I really liked, and my lady friend said, "Hey, would you like to mix things up a little bit?" And so, yeah, probably mixing my Peace Corps experience with I'm sorry, mixing my paramedic experience with what I saw while I was a Peace Corps volunteer, that led me to think that it would be a good idea to use some of my paramedic experience and some of my previous construction experience as well to continue what I had started in Guatemala as a Peace Corps volunteer and turn it into everything that it is now.
Yeah, joining the Peace Corps is definitely mixing it up a bit, on an extreme. So, for those people who don't know kind of what the Peace Corps is, John F. Kennedy started it, right? So, but tell me how the layout. From what I understand, you don't go as a team or two or three people. Don't you go someplace on your own? Do you pick where you go? You serve 2 years. Is that typical? Are you given any kind of resources to work with, or people to talk to, or to help you, guide you in what you're doing? For all those kids watching and listening who want to do something like what you just did, tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so the Peace Corps says, hey, do you have a preference? And our preference was Latin America because we wanted to learn some Spanish. And then you join a cohort during training of about 40 or 50 other people. A bunch of those people are now my best friends. And then after training, and you live with a host family during training, after training, you go out to your Peace Corps site. And then that is when you are pretty much by yourself in the middle of nowhere. There are a whole bunch of other Peace Corps volunteers spread throughout the country, and so on occasion, everybody would meet up in one of the tourist towns, and we would hang out. But then after that, you all go back out to your site. Uh, the time whenever I joined, I personally didn't have a lot of oversight, or not as much as I probably should have had, because my Peace Corps trainer got sick, and he got quite busy with being sick and didn't really oversee my group of Peace Corps volunteers as well as he possibly could have. And so I was kind of felt like I was on my own while I was there. I could have asked for more help and they most certainly would have given it to me, but I didn't mind being in the middle of nowhere on my own, learning Spanish and taking things as it came.
Wow. So you didn't even speak Spanish when you went down. So you didn't put your toe in the water. You jumped in head first.
Yeah, not a word of Spanish other than maybe the occasional Mexican food restaurant Spanish, queso and
Margarita.
azul
Wow.
margarita.
Amazing. So, but you didn't do this as a kid out of high school or anything. You were already, you said you had construction experience. So you had worked in construction, you were a paramedic. Um, and so this was kind of a mid career or an early career choice to take a chunk of time out of your life. And it's a 2 year gig, right? Is that you signed up for and did?
Yeah, it's typically 27 months overall. And most of the people that are in the Peace Corps are recent college graduates because that is one of the requirements. Well, I had an associate's degree in emergency medical services, and I was 27 years old at the time. So I wasn't a typical Peace Corps volunteer exactly. I was a little bit deeper into my career, and really, I didn't use any of my emergency medical service training while I was there. They had me doing rural youth at risk, which the idea was to work with youth groups and to improve the self-esteem of the youth in the village where I was working.
Wow, that's a whole different thing. Now, just because I know everybody else is probably thinking they're questioning the same thing, your friend, did you see her while you were over there, or do you even know her today?
Not too terribly well. Things did not go very well for us while we were there at the same time, and I remained, and she left, and that lady friend became no more.
Ah, well, that's the reality of life. It's that it didn't have
Little spice to
a
the story.
romantic ending. But
Right.
okay, so you're 27. You go over there for 2 years to Guatemala, not a place you. They kind of picked it. You said Latin America, and then they picked that for you. You went down there. Um, Tell us about that first experience. You're spending. It's probably not quite as comfortable as the bed you had at home. Food's going to be a little different. Maybe when you travel, everybody who travels understands that Giardia is around the corner at some point in time. A lot of things that did you self question your decision and get a little homesick, a little nervous? Tell us about what you were feeling.
Yeah. Prior to going to the Peace Corps, I was not a world traveler. You hear about
Oh,
those people who like traveled Europe right out of high school or out of college who I'd never even heard of Guatemala whenever I went there. I had never been to Latin America. I didn't speak any Spanish. So I was a true fish out of water when I got there. Right. And strangely enough, within that space, for some reason, I really thrived. I really enjoyed what Guatemala had to offer. And Guatemala, in a certain way, kind of looks like East Texas, right? There's a lot of dirt roads, and I really like dirt roads. Um, it's filled with small farmers, right? There are small farmers on every corner, and I didn't do much farming growing up because I was raised in a suburban neighborhood by a single mom, but the personalities were similar, as in, the kind of people that would stop and say hello and talk to you and want to get to know you. Like the pace was slower. I'd never really spent time in a city, so moving out to a rural area in the middle of nowhere, strangely enough, really worked for me. So the food, I it's chicken and beef and a lot of vegetables, and you can't drink the water. You're using the compost latrine. There's no flush toilets. A lot of people that I know really suffered in those conditions, and for whatever reason, it did not bother me at all, and to this day, does not bother me at all.
Wow. So you were there for your gig. Then what? Did you go back to being a paramedic? Did you stay for a while? Or did you go back home and then go back to Guatemala? Or what was the next piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, so after Peace Corps, I decided to move back to America, try to live a normal life. I got a job, I enrolled in college to finish a bachelor's degree, and thought that everything was gonna, normalize, and it didn't, right? I could not stop thinking about what I saw while I was there. And what I saw while I was there was extreme poverty. I saw little kids carrying firewood on their heads instead of going to school, carrying water, scavenging to have a place to live. And I saw it on a pretty massive scale, and I saw it all over the country because as a Peace Corps volunteer, you have this really rare experience. Most of the time, whenever you're traveling, you stick, to random countries, most people stick to the tourist places. Well, when you have friends all over the country living in random small villages, you really get to see a side of the country that most people don't get to see. And what I saw was extreme poverty, right? And so the fact that I was exposed to this, I kind of felt, like I wish somebody would have told me throughout my life that that's what was going on in the world. The other thing is, as a Peace Corps volunteer, there is absolutely nothing to do in the evenings, right? So what you end up doing is reading. And I cannot say I was much of a reader before I went to Guatemala. I may have made it through high school without reading a single book. There's a real possibility. Um, but when you're left alone at night and you don't have streaming services yet, didn't have iPhones yet, didn't have any of those things, I picked up and read every single book with it that I could find. What I found while I was reading is what actually happened in Guatemala. That had a profound impact on me and helped me to decide that I would better represent Americans and I would help the people living in poverty, and I would do it for the rest of my life.
So that's it goes along with something I always say. I kind of got pulled into nonprofit work myself, not ever thinking I would, but what I say is once you see it, you can't unsee it. So when you see that kind of injustice or whatever it may be, a need that's deep, and that you know that you've also seen systems that are working, right? In the US, our system, um, not always working perfectly, but it's a working system. And you've gone to school, you've done different things, and you know that your skill set can actually improve the lives of others. It's hard to ignore that. Do you feel you ever had really a strong social conscience before this, or was this just a benefit of your traveling?
I think my time as a paramedic gave me the idea that I could have an impact, right? Because, you get into some pretty tricky situations as a paramedic. And I had a tendency to go above and beyond as a paramedic, try to have a nice bedside manner for the patients, like try to be nice and kind to everybody. But no, I don't think I'd ever even heard of the concept of volunteering before the Peace Corps because
Wow.
my family wasn't exactly a big volunteering family. We didn't do much philanthropy. We didn't have extra money to do anything like that while I was growing up. And so this was, the first time that I'd ever even considered doing anything like that. And yeah, now I can't hardly not do it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's an excuse for a lot of people to not do something, to not to help other people, to use their skill sets to do anything. But one of the excuses is, well, we don't have a lot of money, right? But here you are, a perfect example of someone who didn't come from a lot of money or didn't come from a family or some religious institution telling you that this is what you got to do. You just went, saw it, and did it, and you've stayed with it, which is impacting the lives of other people. So you'll leave with a great social footprint. But how many years has it been then? How long? You went into the Peace Corps early 2000s?
Early 2002, so 2025 is my 23rd year directly engaged in this
Wow.
process.
And do you live in Texas now, or do you go back and forth, or is it easier to manage and run the company or the organization from the States, or a little of both, or how does that work?
And after the Peace Corps and I went back to the United States, I spent most of 2004 putting the organization together, right? And then, like Jack Kerouac style, I bought a $500 car in January 2005. I sold all of my belongings. I raffled my sports car so we would have money at the very beginning of this entire thing. And I picked up a buddy in Dallas, picked up another friend in Houston, and then we drove to Guatemala together. And so, yeah, very humble beginnings from the outset. And yeah, and then here we are 23 years later, and couldn't be having much more fun with what we're
Well,
doing.
there's not really the best playbook out there on the market, at least one that I've seen, to start a nonprofit. We've done the same thing with urban farming, but we're in Africa, and getting NGO status over there takes forever, and just going through all the different things. And of course, the worst thing is fundraising, because that with a little bit of money, you can make such an impact. But it's different. You started, and then the money came out of your own pocket, as limited as it was, but you know how difficult that process is. Um, how long did it take you to kind of put the pieces together?
Well, I'd say I'm still putting the pieces together. Right. So what
Still
got us
looking for a
started
few.
was yeah, in the nonprofit world, it'd sure be nice if there was a point in which you weren't doing that. But that is not the case with me. And funny is, like, the book that I started with was Nonprofit for Dummies. My younger brother bought that book, and I still have the original book. And yeah, whenever you're starting a nonprofit organization and you're doing it in 2004, this is pretty much before the internet. So I filled it out with a pen. I went to the library to get a paper application. But then there were some key people along the way that really got this whole thing going. For example, I cold called lawyers and accountants, but I only had to call a couple of them. And Martin Levine, who's no longer with us, he did all of the accounting and filed with the IRS. And Jennifer Bridges, who's also no longer with us, she filed the corporate paperwork and did all of that. And so they both did all of that for free. I can't imagine that actually I would have continued, or maybe I wouldn't have continued in the same capacity had those people not stepped up and said, sure, I'll help you. Because what I was pitching to them was like, hey, I'm going to go back to Guatemala after my Peace Corps service. And at that point, I was talking about building a city park. It's not even what I'm doing now, right? And so, people can be really amazing and take some leaps. And then I asked few of my friends to be on the board of directors. And they were like, "What are you going to do?" I was like, "Well, here's an idea, but I'm not exactly sure. So let's see how this goes." And my friends go, "Okay, sure. I'll help however I can."
It does take uh, many years to try this, try that, and to understand. And then you really have to think through, well, am I making the impact that I could be if I did something a little bit different? Or the other thing is how to stay focused on one or two things to make sure you get those one or two things right. Um, so it took us a long time to get the final mission and purpose of what we do. Then you have to create your brand and what your brand stands for, and then your entire approach from there kind of fall. You have to decide which initiatives are doable and which are not, and then there's the capital issue and the whole thing. Um, so I share your I don't know, the story, I guess, the pains and tribulations that you have gone through. But what do we do? What are you doing now? I've looked, I've cheated, and I've looked at some of your profile and stuff, and green building with garbage. What does that even mean?
Great question. Yeah, well, so, we're not doing what we started doing, right? We started off saying, hey, let's build a city park. And we did build the first city park in the history of that town, right? And there was the first grass soccer field in a town that loves soccer. And we built that.
Was it rain
That got,
fed? Was it rain fed grass, or did you actually put any
yeah, because
irrigation in?
no, it's rain fed because there's a rainy season there, and but then we got Engineers Without Borders to do a water project for us, and they provided us with water during the dry season. We never
Oh,
actually managed to get any irrigation into the ground,
wow.
but yeah, we had a full on water system to water the soccer field, and so that got us all kinds of friends and popularity within the town. And then I also like to play ball myself and played 7 days a week. And I played with the politicians and the painters and the builders and the kids and the parents and played, played all the time. Well, because of that, we got to know everybody. And then what
Hmm.
there's these pivotal moments that you're not anticipating that can change everything. And then we were going to a tourist town and we saw a woman who was using plastic bottles filled with trash to build a perimeter fence. Right. And then we go, okay, well, some of the kids in the neighborhood can't afford the 30 cents that we charge to get into this park. So, how about if we charge them plastic bottles filled with trash to get into the park?
Oh, what a great
Then all of a
idea.
sudden we had 25,000 bottles. Right. And then you're asking, what is green building? Well, once I knew we were kind of done with the park and that it was time for the next thing because we still saw people living in extreme poverty and the park wasn't doing anything about that. All of our neighbors didn't have water, didn't have stoves, didn't have a lot of the other basics to survive. So in order to scale it up, I asked a buddy of mine if he would help me build a school. And then that buddy said, have you ever heard of building out of trash? And then we were off to the races.
No, you didn't go to school as an architect or an engineer, but you started building. How did it go? Did the first building fall down on you, or did it? Where did you? Where did you get plan sets that, or a book? Where did you read a book saying, "Let's build this building out of trash"? Is there? I don't, probably isn't a building out there, book out there, is there?
There's one, right? We found the one book. And this is, the same thing. It's the chain of events. So that friend received a book from another one of his friends, not knowing any of these things were actually going to happen. And that friend gave my friend Earthship Volume 1. Earthship is an organization out in New Mexico, and they are on the mesa and they build houses using tires, off grid, harvesting water because they're way out in the middle of nowhere. So we got that book, and this book is basically a manual for how you do this. So
Wow.
we took that first tire, we put it on the ground, we got a couple of sledgehammers, a couple of wheelbarrows of dirt, maybe a couple of beers, and decided to have fun with the fact that we were going to be using sledgehammers to pack dirt into tires. So we put the first one on the ground, we followed the instructions, and then we did the second one, and then we got like, 8 or 10 courses tall. We saw that they were unstable and we saw that we had packed the tires too much. So we had to tear all of those tires down and then start over from scratch again. And then we got some guidance. We called the people in New Mexico. They told us a better way to do it. And so, yeah, our first building was a real trial and error. We had to use a pickup truck to drive along the inter-American highway to pick up tires from little mom and pop tire shops who, whenever we picked the tires up, looked at us like we were crazy. All of the people around us, all the locals, and we said we're going to build a house out of tires, they were like, that sounds absolutely crazy. So, yeah, we didn't have a lot of buy in at the very beginning, but by the time we finished, created a super stable structure where the temperature didn't vary from anywhere from the inside to the outside. It's a wonderful structure. Everybody was on board.
So you're how many of those have you put in since that first one?
We've used well over 150,000 tires by now, and we've done it on a couple of different continents. And we used to count every single tire, and now we're so many tires and plastic bottles and cans and, and glass bottles in that we don't exactly much count. I'll throw the word, I'll throw the number $100,000 or 100,000 tires out there from time to time, but it's way more. It's way more than that by now.
And how many different homes? How many do you think you have? You even keep
I
track of them?
mean, I have a folder in Google Drive and we're up to 150-ish, right?
Wow.
But they're not all homes because different organizations ask us for different things. Like last 2 days ago, we were building a classroom in a small village. And then we've built health clinics, we've built retaining walls, we've built homes, we built a variety of different structures for a
Wow.
variety of different purposes. And it's not way cheaper than conventional building if you think about doing with cinder block. But what you ultimately get is a much better, much longer lasting structure.
Well, you're
And so
using
that
waste.
is what draws people's attention.
Yeah, you're using waste as well. So you're taking care of a waste problem and you're putting it together. Now, I'm just a curiosity on this from my background in construction. Did you use a concrete floor or do you use a dirt floor? And what do you do for a roof?
We
And how about doors and windows?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, so those are really great questions because those are the questions that really kind of haunt us. By the time you've used tires in the walls or bamboo or some type of alternative material, you are still left with what am I going to do for the floors, windows, doors, and roof, and how do you do that sustainably? And what we have done is tried a little bit of everything. We have done some earthen floors and we've done concrete floors. Concrete floors you can do in about 2 days. Earthen floors take months, right? So we'd prefer to do earthen floors, but don't always have months to install an earthen floor.
Hmm.
With the roof, we do a lot of barrel vaults because of the way that we do our tire buildings. And so, if you were looking, because Guatemala and the area where we live is very seismically active. So, whatever you build, you need to build expecting the big one to come, right? And so, if you do a barrel vault, you can use opposing forces and then build out towards your buttresses and then build storage rooms and build so that if you're doing long walls, that those long walls are interrupted with something to give them some strength. But we also build in ovals, we build in circles. We're constantly sort of overbuilding as well to deal with the fact that yeah, the that in 1976 an earthquake killed a large part of the population where we are currently
Wow.
doing most of our construction.
So you got involved with building. You did a park, and then you're building homes and other things. You have clinics and things like that, and schools now. Do you get involved with agriculture? Do you get involved with energy needs, or get involved with maybe the education program?
Yeah, so agriculture is pretty well covered. Not that it's entirely perfectly covered, but in Guatemala, if you look around, you're going to find what you'll find the most of are agriculturally based organizations.
Okay.
What the government is the best at doing is doing agricultural type programs because you're surrounded by agricultural type people who, and so me having never done anything really agriculturally based before all of this, we didn't decide to put that much focus on agriculture. Although, whenever we started, we did do organic gardens so that we could share our organic food. And then after we did organic gardens, and then we got a blight one night and lost pretty much the entire crop, we shifted most of our operations towards construction.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's
and so, yeah, then I could
Guatemala is, of
tell you
course,
about
it
education.
doesn't have the food problem because it's equator, your volcanic soils, a great place to grow. You could almost throw seed down. You got rain-fed agriculture with real rain. So, and people have been growing their own food for thousands of years there. So it's not, that's not necessarily their biggest problem. And like you said, the government and the other NGOs end up focusing on that. But so, what other aspect? How about schools or you have a background in medicine? Any of that that you've been involved with? It's kind of hard to go into a community and not see a problem and go to work on it, right?
That's so true. Yeah. So, like there are all these rabbit holes that you can go down. And so one of the members of our board of directors, her husband was an ER doc, and this ER doc started collecting sea collars and extra medical equipment. And because of his involvement, we helped to start first first responder crew, right? And then so I drove a van all the way from Boston down to Guatemala with medical equipment, and that had backboards and sea collars in it. About 3 weeks after I got there, we got into a head on collision while I was on a city bus. Something came off of a rack and knocked me over the head. My head was covered with blood. When I woke up, if you're into that whole karma thing, they had me strapped to the board that I brought and using a sea collar that I brought only 3 weeks ago. So
Wow.
yeah, that was a pretty good rabbit hole to have gone down.
Yeah.
And then yeah, um, you'll hear my voice change as I start to talk about what we're doing in education.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what is the school system like? They got a primary school or we call them the grade schools, I guess, here in the States. And then high school level, university level. Does anybody get to university level or even to a high school level education? And what is their focus?
Yeah, so the statistics are abysmal, right? What you end up seeing is that Um, so one thing that did improve majorly in Guatemala was who graduates from primary school. The world set out to improve that statistic, and I would say they did a pretty good job. But then you get into middle school and high school. Now, at no level is any kid required to go to school. If you want to drop out of school, nobody's going to knock on your door and say that you absolutely must go, as what happens in the United States,
Hmm.
right? And so some of the statistics that I saw were, 41% of people never enroll in middle school, 17% of people actually graduate from middle school, 1% of people ever enroll in high school, or maybe I'm sorry, it was 7% of people ever enroll in high school, and then 1% of people actually ever enroll in college. That
Wow.
is largely because the job prospects are not there. There's not much of a middle class.
Not a
There's
lot
not
of
much
infrastructure.
industry. There's not a lot of jobs. And so that makes it difficult for people to want to continue their education.
Wow. So do you work with other NGOs? Has that been part of the mission is to, because it seems to me like when we are in Malawi, for instance, that there's some NGOs like you just even alluded to that are focused on maybe agriculture, but you're not, or they might be focused on water or something that is not your. focus, and that as a group of NGOs, you can go into a community and accomplish more.
Sure, we've been adjusting our partnership model over the years. And so because we've been in one town and we've been there for as long as we have, in addition to the other places, but we've had a steady presence in one town. And now because of that steady presence, we partner with EcoHab to do this recent classroom, right? They're an NGO that is out of New Mexico. And then we teamed up with teamup.org, who does service learning trips, and they paid for the classroom. We team up with WATA.org to pass out water filters. Terra firma floors. We build 12 floors per family. So we also partner with Engineers Without Borders, and we're on our 8th village where we're installing water for the entire village. Now, what all of these organizations have in common is that they don't want to move to Guatemala full time.
Yeah,
They
and
want to have a major impact.
you're the anchor.
Right, but we're already there, and we've shown that they can trust us. And so they, will collaborate with us, go, here's the money to do the project. We're going to come down for part of the time to do it with you. But if you guys can maintain these projects, then we'll continue to collaborate with you. And now we have a whole bunch of partners, which eases the fundraising. We're hoping to have as large of an impact as we're having now, but we personally don't have to raise all of the money necessary to have as big of an impact as we're having right now.
That's great. What we've just recently, over the last year or two, have noticed. Well, we're in Malawi. We started 6 years ago in that part of Africa, and what we've noticed is that the people who we're working with now have kind of changed the way they approach us, and I've had people come up and say, "Well, you're not going away anyway, are you?" Or, you are consistently being here, and that means everything, because a lot of NGOs go in, they're not funded well, they don't have a focus, they don't know exactly how to work within a community, and they try to bring, I want to say, appropriate what we know how to do here, and go over there and kind of push that down, and it doesn't seem to work. Maybe they have money, and some of that money does go to some of the people, but then they pull out. And I think that consistency that you just brought up is kind of a crazy thing. Um, Yesterday, I met with Peter and Kim. Peter's head of science at ASU, or head of science teacher. He's they all have some kind of credential that I'm not sure how the institutions lay it all out, but he's a biology and science teacher, and I think he works with PhD students, but he's been a big part of working with us and his wife Kim, and they are two of the primary drivers. They go, like I do, every year to Malawi, and we've got a team. We've decided that it's best to have a team of people there rather than just trying to import people from here. I'm assuming you probably have found the same thing, that it's a matter of working with the locals if you really want to get things done, and for people, because it's their community ultimately, right? So, but we have a platform, an education platform that is STEM. So it's STEM based, but it's garden based, and it's one that we think is scalable anywhere on the planet, where we take standards from wherever we are, whatever they want is culturally, and then we build the curriculum. But it's all pretty similar. A 10-year-old is a 10-year-old. A 5-year-old is a 5-year-old. A high school kid was a certain age. But the idea is to work with these kids, develop curiosity, and show them, give them tools in which they can learn. Interesting enough, we're in Africa, and a couple of places in Africa, and of course we're here in the States. And I talked to Kim and Peter yesterday and said, I just got back from Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Mongolia. It's still the same Earth, and people are people, and we still have a lot of the same issues. But there's a difference too, cultural difference, but also in the farming that they're doing, they're working with pasture lands, with the steppe, or grasslands, whatever you want to call it, and they're nomadic and they're nomads. So um, I talked to them and I said, we should also be thinking of South America. And interesting enough, we were like kicking it around. Well, should we go to where do you go in South America? Some places have unrest. Ecuador, there's some issues with drugs and violence and stuff. And Costa Rica's a cool place, but then I was like, hey, you know what? Everybody eats pretty well in Costa Rica. From what I can see, it's another easy place to grow. But um, we are garden based, but it's really an education platform. And then Peter and Kim mentioned Guatemala, and we'll see. Maybe there's a pathway for us to connect with what we're doing at some point in time.
Well, I think that pathway might come within about the next 4 to 5 seconds as I start to explain uh, some of the overlap that we actually have. I'm doing a doctoral program in education because all this green building that we've done, you might find interesting in that we are working towards integrating that green building into the lesson plans for the teachers at our school. We currently have 178 students pre-K through high school that attend our school, right? And so in Guatemala, and it may be like this in Malawi, the the Ministry of Education decides what you're going to learn,
Of course,
right? And so
those are the
yeah, and
standards.
so the Ministry of Education, their learning objectives are really abstract. So at first, this was kind of annoying because there were no daily lesson plans, which meant there really wasn't much of a plan, which meant that the teachers were sort of shooting from the hip. And now, I was like, okay, we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time building an entire campus, doing it out of alternative materials, harvesting water, using tires, experimenting with bamboo, trying all these roofs and all this stuff. And the neighbors weren't all picking up on it. So, what we decided we were going to do is take advantage of the opportunity that was presented to us and that we would work this material into the lesson plans
Right.
for the teachers. And this is when this gets really good. And I think I'm going to see you in Guatemala fairly soon when we decide to collaborate on this potentially together. And yes, I'm taking my role as an executive director and doing what
Of
I do
course.
best. And I don't know how to not do exactly. And that is talk about exploring the possibility of working those lesson plans, working all of that information into those lesson plans. So, for example, when you talk about doing math, I think that the reason an entire punk movement emerged, it was because school was so boring, right? How many
Yeah. Well,
songs
it's
did
too
Pink Floyd
abstract, is
write?
what it is, right?
Right, it's so abstract and it's boring and it doesn't relate. So what we did was go, okay, people in Comalapa, our town in Guatemala, are cooking over open flames indoors and they're getting sick and they're using styrofoam to do it and they're
Oh
burning
yeah.
through too much firewood. So
Yeah.
let's use that math in math class to design a ventilated stove, one that the entire family can sit around that can heat up their home. So now in seventh grade, rather than doing abstract social studies, math, science, we adapt everything back to that stove.
Great.
And because the Ministry of Education is not very specific with what they require, we're able to create lesson plans that still comply with what they require,
Sure.
meaning that what I'm talking about is quite scalable. And what we're going to do is share our lesson plans with the other schools in the area. And that means we're going to have an entire teaching force citywide where we can scale these poverty fighting concepts such as ventilated stove building, water tanks, schoolrooms. All of this can be done by 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, right?
Right.
And we don't have to pay the teachers to do it. So we're in a
Yes.
position to scale. You're into education. I'm really into education at this moment. I think I'm seeing some
So we
overlap.
definitely have to talk. Our platform is doing exactly that, taking the standard, which is the Ministry of Education, whether those standards are ambiguous or they're tight or not, doesn't matter, because we take the standards, create the curriculum, but we relate it to STEM. For us, it's garden based. So we have vermicomposting and composting and urban farming and that kind of thing. Those are lessons that but you can teach math and biology and chemistry and all that uh, through those plans. But it's practical. In Malawi, they want vocation. They want, hey, they're going to go here. They better be able to apply this to help their family or to help themselves get jobs or to sustain themselves, right? So and cook stoves, a whole nother thing. One of the big problems on the planet, and it's in Latin America, Asia, or usually Southeast, but also Central Asia, and in Africa, is we're tearing down forests to burn fuel. They use the fuel for building materials or to just cook their food, and it's I think 8% of the greenhouse gas comes from soot. The soot doesn't last as long as other greenhouse gases, but it's 25 times worse, right? So it's a big problem, and there's a simple solution. One is a clean cook stove. For me, it's taking and growing a crop like a hemp, turning it into biochar, and now you've got a sustainable crop that can be used as your fuel source, so you're not tearing down your forests and your old growth forest. So very similar stuff. What we do is educate the teachers, and that's the first professional development, and show the teachers, and then the teachers take the kids. And Peter and Kim go in a lot of different places on the planet, but they have a thing called "We Teach, You Watch, You teach, we watch." So they will teach all the teachers together. Then they go into the classroom and watch the teachers applying that same lesson plan or that teaching to the students, and they watch and they give each other all feedback. And it's a really cool system. There's 4, and I don't pronounce the word right, pedagogies. There are 4 different principles of education that I think are lacking. The unification of those principles are really good. It's inquiry based or problem solving based, which is really the individual taking curiosity and working on something on their own. And then there's process communication model, which is all about being able to communicate to people and be able to explain what you're doing and talk to people and understand how to talk to people. And then the last one is collaboration, something that the world needs more and more collaboration. So it's a pretty good system. So I'll definitely get on with you. I think Maria has all your contact, and I'll get a call going with Peter and Kim, and you do your recruiting that any good NGO CEO would do. But that was, so my concept is I want to be in different environments on the planet. It's the same planet. The biomes are a little different. You're in a more of an equator jungle, rainy central, Central American part of the world or South American part of the world. And Mongolia is Central Asia, and so is Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. Africa is Africa. It's where we all come from. We're here in North America now. Definitely, there's a lot of people who are way even advanced from all the things we're doing in Europe. But the idea is to get people in different parts of the planet, because a lot of what you're doing can be applied in other places. A lot of mistakes being done in one area can be avoided in another. just through this collaboration. The one thing we know is you can't scale or really you can't make a difference if you don't scale the difference that you really want. And you can't do that without collaborating with more and more NGOs. That's a silo doesn't fly. You know what I mean? And it takes a long, long time to figure that out and to work well with other people. But appreciate your time here today. And I'm sure we're going to be probably doing a podcast down in Guatemala at some point. So, Matt, I appreciate you being here today as a guest. And oh, you know what? I think I failed to even mention the name of your organization and website and info. Why don't you do that?
We are Long Way Home, and we are at lwhome.org. My email address is matt@lwhome.org, and we're on Facebook and Instagram. We're easy to find, and yeah, we're interested in collaboration and take volunteers all the time from anywhere around the world. And because, we've done a few things, but we're mostly interested in what other people know. We're kind
Yeah.
of tired of what we know.
Well, I encourage everyone who's watching to go onto your websites and look at the things you're doing. I have particular interest to see how you're structurally working with the trash and creating spaces for people to do the things that we in a society need to do: live, go to school, take care of ourselves. So I'm looking forward to spending a little more time with you on that, and I hope other people also look, and if they resonate, if I'm sure they want to volunteer or donate money, you're not opposed to any of those things. So thank you for being here today, and for any of you who want, you can go onto that website, and we encourage everyone to subscribe and follow Harvesting Wisdom to see more stories like this. And Matt, I wish you luck, and I'm sure we'll be in touch shortly.
I look forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity today to tell our story.
All right. Appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah,
Thank you.
take care.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.